I have the I can do anything curse. So when I wanted to install wallpaper in my powder room, there was no one who was going to tell me no. And if I can figure out how to install wallpaper, you guys 100% can. In this video, I'm going to go over all the tips and tricks when it comes to putting up wallpaper, especially in those tricky areas like corners, crown molding, and outlets. If you like things being broken down in a really simple way to understand, you have found the right channel. Wallpapering can be so intimidating, and that is exactly how I felt wallpapering this space. But I'm going to tell you all my tips and tricks and what helped me succeed wallpapering this space so you can do the same. I'm going to go into the nitty gritty of this. I'm going to tell you every detail that's going to help you. So let's get started. I'm going to start off with a couple tips on how to set yourself up for success. If these are the only tips you take away from this video, you're still going to be farther ahead than most people. Tip number 1. You're going to start wallpapering on a wall that has the least amount of eyes on it versus starting on a wall where everyone's going to be looking. So for example, over top of your vanity. My advice for this would be starting to wallpaper behind a door, which is exactly what I did for this space. I started wallpapering on this wall by choosing a wall that is somewhat hidden from the rest of the space. You're giving yourself the opportunity to get really good at wallpapering by the time you get to those high eye traffic areas. So that is tip number 1. Tip number 2, and this is arguably the most important tip out of all these first 3 tips, is to make sure that your first piece of wallpaper is level, and you're going to do this with a laser level. You get the first piece level, you're just setting yourself up for success for the rest of the space, because now every piece after that should be level. Tip number 3, when you are starting to wallpaper and you're about to put your first piece, do not line up your wallpaper so that it is perfectly lining up with this corner. You want to put your wallpaper in a spot that when you put the next strip, you're going to get overlap onto this other wall. You don't want the wallpaper lining up perfectly to your corner because homes are not perfectly square. They shift with time, and it is not going to line up perfectly if you measure it this way. And a way to ensure that you have overlap for your corners is when you are choosing the spot for your first piece of wallpaper, take your roll of wallpaper, put it against the wall, and do a little tick on either side. And then once you have those ticks, take the roll of wallpaper again, and then put it over to the side, line the one up with that tick. And if it doesn't line up perfectly with the corner, then you know there's going to be that overlap, which is exactly what you want. Now that we have talked about the 3 basic steps that you should be doing at the beginning of wallpapering, let's get to the rest of it. Okay, it's wallpaper time. Our wallpaper is striped, so if it's not level, we're going to be able to see. My game plan is to put a piece in the middle here and then overlap for the corners. I did do a mark where I want my piece to end. I taped my laser level to the wall. I'm going to base the line with this other level. It does look level down here, which is what I want. And I'm going to do a pencil line. And this is the line that we are going to line our wallpaper up. Again, we want it to be as level as possible because this piece affects the rest of the space. And a really helpful tip that I found is trace your line with your pencil and do a little tick on the ceiling and then another tick either on your floor or on your trim work like me. And that way you can line those pieces up perfectly, especially if you're kind of covering the line as you put that piece on. You can double check that it's truly level by making sure that tick is lined up on either end of the wallpaper. Now that we have our line on the wall, it's time to cut our first piece of wallpaper and put it up. I am measuring the length of my wall and I'm going a little bit over. So I have extra to cut off at the end. So my wall measurements are 42.5. I'm going to 43. And I'm making these lines and then we're going to cut it. Now I am just drawing the line with my level. You don't need to use a level, you can just use a straight edge. And that's where I'm cutting. You really want to do this very precisely. So take your time. Obviously, your next step is putting up your wallpaper glue. Because I do not like commitments, I made a cornstarch paste that is a renter-friendly option for putting up wallpaper. So this method isn't supposed to damage your walls in any way, and I have heard peel and stick is a nightmare to install, and glue is a lot easier because you have way more wiggle room. So that's another reason I opted for this. I will do a separate video on how to make this cornstarch paste for wallpaper glue, so you can check out that video if that's something you want to do. Put on a nice coat of your glue onto the wall, and then you're going to start putting up your wallpaper. I have the paste on. We're going to put the first piece on. I'm going to line up my line here and line this up all the way down. Once you have your wallpaper in place, you're going to go in with a plastic smoother and get all the bubbles out of the wallpaper. If you don't have a plastic smoother, you can use a mudding trowel, but if you decide to use this method, press down gently with the trowel because it's a lot sharper than the plastic smoother and it will rip your wallpaper. Once you begin smoothing out the wallpaper, you want to apply even pressure with your trowel, and you're just slowly going to work all those bubbles out. Once you have the bubbles out, you do want to go up to the ceiling and to the floor or your trim work and use a lot of pressure there because we're going to go in after and cut that excess piece of wallpaper. So get it nice and snug on your ceiling and either your baseboards or trim work. And if at any point you get any of your adhesive on your wallpaper, just take a baby wipe or damp sponge and wipe it off. Don't want it to be drenched in water when you're wiping it. You just want it to be a little damp because you don't want to damage any of the wallpaper. But the nice part about the cornstarch paste is that it doesn't leave stains on your wallpaper once you take it off. I can't speak for regular wallpaper paste, but with the homemade stuff, you don't have to worry about that at all. When you go to cut the excess wallpaper, you want to use your smoother or trowel and put a lot of pressure in that crack, and then take an alpha knife and cut it. You want to have a fresh alpha knife because you want it to be very sharp, so it's giving you a clean line when you're cutting the wallpaper. And if it is not a fresh alpha knife, it actually bunches the wallpaper with the glue and it doesn't look good. Okay, now I'm just gonna cut the top, do it the exact same way. It does not need to be perfect up here for me because I'm putting crown molding up here. I'm gonna try to make it as good as I can, but ultimately it doesn't truly matter. Now, let's get to the most complicated part of wallpapering, which is tackling your corners. But don't worry, I'm gonna hold your hand through the whole thing and we're gonna get through it together. This is how you are gonna apply wallpaper to a corner. So you need to take a measurement from here to here. I already did that. It is 19 inches, but I am adding half an inch more. So I am cutting my wallpaper to 19.5 inches. I already have this. It's a straight line. So I don't need to do a laser level here. I am lining it up with this piece, and that's why it's so important that your first piece is straight, because if it's not, it's going to dictate how the rest of the room is and it won't be level. I did that measurement on the wall, and because this is striped, I don't need to do any pencil lines. So I'm gonna cut 19.5 to this line, and then we're going to put it on the wall. And the piece you are cutting off here, you are keeping, so do not throw it away because you're going to need it. I'm going to apply the glue here quick, and then we're going to put it on together. Now that you have your piece of wallpaper cut, you are simply just going to put it on the wall. We don't need to overcomplicate this, overthink it. You did your measurements. You're going to leave a half an inch more, and then you're going to start installing that piece of wallpaper towards your corner. And because our other piece is already level, as you know, we do not need to use a laser level again. So line up your wallpaper with the piece that you just installed and do it up into your corner. And you're going to go nice and slow and smooth out your wallpaper and get it nice and tight in that corner. And then we are going to start cutting that corner down again with your brand new alpha knife. You're going to cut that corner and trim it until it is perfectly in that corner. And that's why we left the half inch, so that there'd be a little left over for us to trim at the end. Okay, now I'm taking this excess piece and putting it up here. The excess piece that I'm referring to is the piece you just trimmed from that corner piece of wallpaper you installed. The side I cut, I'm putting to the corner. The cut, this line is what the company made. The one that's the factory cut, you want it to be outside. And this has to be level because it affects all your other pieces. I have my laser level on. I'm going to draw a line, And then my excess wallpaper that I cut from that last piece is gonna go in the corner. And the reason you want the factory side to be on the outside where your next piece connects is because we can ensure that this piece is being installed straight and level versus the side you cut. It's not gonna be perfectly straight. It's not gonna be perfectly level because you made a man-made cut. I wanted to show what the wallpaper looked like after installing it in a corner this way. It looks so clean and crisp. I really recommend doing it this way. I did a different technique for another spot in the bathroom for the corner and it didn't turn out as well. I don't even think I'm going to show it because I don't think it's worth your while. And once you have your excess piece installed, you're just going to take a new piece of wallpaper and continue installing as you have been. Because there is a window right here, I did go ahead and take a measurement from where the end of the last wallpaper piece is to the window trim. I did this just because having a full piece of wallpaper is so much harder to deal with than a little piece. So this is what just made the most sense for me. And then I started installing that piece. When you're going around window trim, you're just putting an even pressure right up to that trim, and then you're taking your alpha knife and slicing it up the side of that trim. Now let's fast forward and start tackling our next obstacle when it comes to wallpapering in a space, and that is our electrical box for our light fixture. The easiest way to install wallpaper around an electrical box is to make sure that your piece of wallpaper isn't completely covering the electrical box. If you can line your wallpaper up so that it's only partially covered, you're going to make your life way easier. And then you simply install your piece of wallpaper over that electrical box. Again, hopefully you can line it up so it's only partially covered. And then you're just taking a pencil and you are feeling for the outline of the electrical box and doing a nice pencil line all around it. Once you have your pencil line, you're just simply taking your scissors and cutting that line you made. For the piece that goes after, you're doing the exact same thing. You're installing your piece of wallpaper like the electrical box isn't there. You're doing a pencil line and then you're just cutting it out again. And then you have a hole for your light fixture. And it doesn't need to be perfect by any means because you are going to be putting a light fixture over top. So you're not going to see the jagged edges if you screw the cutting part up. And I would recommend putting some extra wallpaper paste underneath where you had just cut, just to make sure it's extra secure on those spots because you were kind of lifting it when you're doing the cut. Let's move on now to the next challenge when it comes to wallpapering, which is wallpapering around an outlet. Putting wallpaper around your outlet is honestly so simple compared to everything else I've shown you. To prep for this, turn your power off. That is so important. Once your power is off, take some painter's tape and put that over your plug-in. You want to cover the plug-in because you don't want any of your cornstarch or glue to get in the outlet holes. Once that prep is done, you're just going to start installing the piece of wallpaper like you normally would. You're not going to pre-cut a hole or anything like that. Start putting the wallpaper on. Once you get to the outlet part, you're going to take your alpha knife and start cutting around the outlet. And that's why you want the power to be off, because you're going in with your blade and you don't want to accidentally electrocute yourself. And just like that, you have successfully installed wallpaper around an outlet. Now let's move on to installing wallpaper around molding. To get this to line up perfect, I'm cutting here where this line is. Where there's a piece of the molding coming out, you're cutting directly to that piece. So now I'm going to be able to take a razor along here and cut it. And then I will work on the next part. I have this first one off. Now I'm going to go up here, make another cut where the peak is. So that's right here. And I'm pushing it in here because I want it to be very lined up. And I'm cutting this off. It's just too much material to work with. It's way easier getting into these nooks and crannies without having that. Now I can see where this is lining up a little better. And I'll show you up here. I can see where this is lining up. So I'm pushing here and then I'm going to cut right here. Literally just kept pushing it in and cutting this whole time. It's not perfect when you look up close, but from far away, you can't even tell that there's a little je ne sais quoi happening. That is all the tips and tricks I have for installing wallpaper in all those tricky areas in your home. If I missed something and you have questions, please put them in the comments and I will try to answer them the best I can. And as always, if you found this video helpful, like and subscribe to my channel. I am always teaching you guys everything I know, and I have so many exciting renovations and projects coming up soon, and you're not going to want to miss those. So stay tuned and see you next time.